Ben McDaniel, who was 30 years old, walked to the end of the pier, put on all of his diving equipment, and jumped in the water. He slowly descended 115 feet and came to a stop right in front of a very famous underwater sign. The sign very clearly tells anybody who sees it, do not go any farther unless you are absolutely certain this is the right thing for you to be doing. If you go farther, you're probably going to die, like the 300 other people that have died doing this particular activity. He swam right past that sign and went 300 feet to the very famous underwater locked gate. Now, the only people that have keys to this are extremely experienced divers, and even they don't typically go into this area because it's so dangerous. Ben was not one of the very experienced divers that was given a key, but he still desperately wanted to get to the other side of the gate. So he's sitting there yanking on the gate, and he's getting himself kind of pushed inside halfway through the gate, and he can't quite get it open. And another diver saw him doing this and was actually concerned that Ben was going to get trapped on the gate itself and would just drown on the gate. And so this diver comes over and uses his key, and maybe against his better judgment opened it, thinking that that was better than him getting stuck on the gate. Ben turns to look at him, gives him a nod, thank you, and he, on his own, swims into one of, if not the single most dangerous underwater caves in the whole world. It's called Vortex Spring Cave. From the locked gate, this cave extends another 1,600 feet and goes down to a depth of 310 feet. The majority of this section of the cave is mapped, but there are sections that are not fully explored because they're so narrow, where you have to literally take off your gear, wriggle through a hole, pull your gear through and put it back on. All the while you're barely holding onto your mouthpiece. And so really the full extent of this section of the cave is not known. While we don't know exactly what Ben did when he went through that gate and entered into this extremely dangerous cave, we do know that he didn't come out again. And after a couple of days and no one had seen him, they launched this massive search for him, and they combed as much as they could of inside of that cave, but there were sections that they were just not prepared to go search. And so he was never recovered. All they ever found were 2 of Ben's dive bottles. As a total side note, when I was reading about the Vortex Spring Cave, it reminded me of some of the things that we did when I was in the Navy SEAL teams. And one of my least favorite things to do is when we would be swimming in and around ships. We would go under barges. And so a barge has a flat bottom. And sometimes they sit really close to the bottom of the ocean, but there's a little space under there where you can maneuver. And so we would go underneath these barges where there was only a few feet of clearance, and it's totally pitch black, and you're swimming in just total blackness where you're so claustrophobic. You're basically tight in this little space where you're just hoping that nothing causes this barge to sink on me. And by the time you get out the other side, it's like this huge sense of relief. And so that's why this is number 1 on my list, because for me, the idea of being trapped in a little tiny alcove inside of an underwater cave where you can't get out, you're running out of air, it's pitch black. I mean, that is just the absolute worst way to go.